All right.
There. Hi.
Hi, Ronnie. How are you doing today?
Good. Sorry about that. I clicked on, but for some reason it didn't go right in.
That's okay. That's part of this process. Takes a minute to get everybody online, but good to have you here today. And I'm excited to hear what you can share around branding and your own personal experience. I know you've recently been through sort of a rebrand, and how that helped you. And yeah, just excited to talk to people today about this idea of branding and how it can simplify our businesses and our lives. I think we kind of, especially if we're, more of a solo entrepreneur or we have a small team, we may feel like branding is something that happens only for big Fortune 500 companies. And that's, we want to kind of dispel that myth today and let people know that you can actually become a brand and use branding now, even if it's you're just a one person service provider. So awesome. Well, why don't you share a little bit about your background? I love your title, Visual Communication and Marketing Pro, and kind of share what that means to you and your clients.
Okay. In terms of the idea of branding for ourselves, I think that it's really important because branding basically is something that elicits an emotional response. It's basically our personality, the stories we tell, who we are. And in this day and age, when there's so many entrepreneurs out there trying to do the same thing, we need to be able to differentiate ourselves. So for me, I'm a graphic designer, and I'm also a marketing person who has an MBA in marketing. And I knew that I wanted to be able to put together those two backgrounds as a graphic designer because it wasn't really common for graphic designers to have both. Mm-hmm. So what I did was I worked with someone who helped me sort of, basically distill that message. And what I came up with is something called collage creative, and I'll explain how I got there. Mm-hmm. I'm a person who, as an artist, loves to collage. I love to collage, with pieces of paper, images, and narratives. And at the same time, I do that more as like a sideline. I sell them, I make them as gifts. But I thought to myself, well, how can I take that concept, because that's really who I am, and turn it into something that could be used for my business? So I thought about my background, and I basically collage in my work because I take my business skills and I take my graphic design skills, and they basically become assembled together into a unique ability that I could give other people. So that's where I got the idea of collage. And this way I'm able to, as my tagline says, fusing business and design, the idea of fusing, assembling different pieces that come together to make a different whole. So that's sort of my background of how I got to collage creative. And what I think is that, as I said earlier, in this world now, even as entrepreneurs, we need to stand out. What makes, one coach different from another coach, or what makes, one designer different from another, or one interior designer different from another. And so much is the personal. Mm-hmm. And the brand is really about the personal, the personality, and the experience. So I think branding is really important for ourselves as business people.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I love that story of how you fused it all together, and that even your tagline uses that word, fusion. So yeah, it is a personal story. Absolutely. And I think that's the piece that, maybe 30 years ago or so, it was that there was kind of this wall between business and professional lives. And you think of like IBM as a brand, right? And it's very structured and kind of cold or methodical. But that is a brand, and it is representing some of the things that their company could do as more, math and engineering type driven company. But for us in this new space where there's so many more people who are running their own businesses, we really do want to bring our personality into it, and we want people to be able to quickly know us. And so that's what a brand can do. It can help quickly tell our story. So I love your personal take on that. And I would also love to hear how, because I think part of getting to that brand is that you have to clarify your vision for both your business and yourself. And it has to kind of already innately be in there, and then it sort of comes forward. So what do you feel like is kind of the process that could help some of our viewers begin to clarify what their brand might be about?
Well, I mean, basically, I think they need to figure out what it is with whatever they're going to do that makes them special in some way. Now, let's face it, I think in this world where there are so many different businesses that do the same thing, it's hard. But I think you have to sort of go in and say, well, what is that special something, whether it's something in your personality or something in your background that you can bring and make people believe in you. And it's not so much that you're not being authentic, but it's because I don't want it to sound that way. But I think that when I say make people believe in you, it's got to be something that's really, different in some way.
Mhm.
And I think that basically being able to relate to people in a certain way is highly important, because a lot of times people don't necessarily buy the product so much. They buy the experience. So as entrepreneurs, we are that experience.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's, someone reaches out to you and you're the type who responds right away, maybe that's something that's secret about you that is enticing for people to want to call you because you're responsive. So it's those little things that you have to find in yourself and then figure out how you're going to get that across to other people.
Yes, that's a great way of putting it. And we had a question prior to putting the session today. We had pulled some questions from some women entrepreneurs in a networking group that we're a part of. And one of them was, when is the right time to invest in branding if you're bootstrapping your business? And I think you kind of just hit on it. Like you can invest in branding without financially outsourcing branding, just by clarifying what are those little unique things about you. But if you do want to put some money toward it, when do you think is a good time to start investing in hiring someone to help you with branding?
Well, I think that you use the right word, investing, as opposed to I think some people sort of look at it as a marketing expense, but I look at it as more an investing, because once you invest a little bit of money into something like that, you'll earn it back because you will have a message that's clear. And when I talk about also the branding and how, you want to make people feel, you also have to keep in mind the things like the logo, because the logo is also going to help people feel a certain way about you. So visually, how are you presenting yourself? Not just what it is about you, but visually, are you bringing people in with that logo? And I think it's very important to do it from the beginning. I think you want to have your message of who you are and be very confident about that before you really go full out there. Really know yourself, or else it's going to be very hard to sell yourself to other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it really helps with your sales, because it feels natural and you're just telling the story of who you are and what your business does. So investing up front as soon as possible. And then another question was, how important is a tagline? And I love that you mentioned yours, the fusion piece, because it's so quickly, if you've got the name collage and then the tagline fusion, it was like, it just pulls that together so quickly in the listener's mind or the viewer's mind in terms of a visual logo. So what do you think, do you feel like a tagline is essential, or is that kind of a nice to have? Does it happen later?
I think it's essential. When I worked on my rebranding, we worked on it together, the logo, and not so much the logo, but the idea of, the name, say, of the company. So I guess you could consider the logo part of that, and also the tagline together, because basically the tagline's tying it together. Mm-hmm. You have your logo, and then the tagline basically is that piece that ties it together, that summarizes what it's all about. So I think it's very important. And also I think it'll help solidify the whole branding experience if you're able to have both together, as opposed to like, well, I'll come up with the name or whatever, and then I'll figure out the tagline. I think it's all in one, really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what do you think in terms of like personal branding versus business branding? Do they always need to be separate, or can you bring them together?
In terms of if you have your own business and okay, I mean, I guess like for me, it's interesting. My business is me, so it's like sort of all in one. But I assume if someone is an entrepreneur and has a different kind of a business, they might feel, like there's sort of like two parts to it: their personal and their business piece. I
Mm-hmm.
think I don't know how much we need personal branding just for ourselves if it's not related to our businesses. So I don't know if that's really the question or.
Yeah, this again came from someone
Yeah.
else. Is do personal branding and business branding together. Um, I mean, I think that just like you're saying, it kind of depends on you have to clarify what is the vision of your business. So if you are a smaller entity like we are, where we basically are our brand, we are our business, and we have, a few subcontractors or people that we collaborate with, in that case, there's a real synergy with being your personal brand being part of your business. But you could look to things like what's the future exit strategy with your business? Do you plan to sell your business in the future, or is this something that you're doing just for you? And when you decide to shut it down, you're not necessarily going to carry it forward to someone else. So if you are planning to sell it, if you do feel like it's a separate entity from you, then I think you might want a little more separation between the two. But I think there's a lot of value if you're just a smaller business, or you have less than 10 subcontractors or employees. Infusing some of your own personality into the business brand, I think, again, can help people quickly relate to your story and to the business's story. And so they're more compelled to engage with that. Because I think that's really what people want now. They want to know what's behind the name, right?
Right.
And I think if you're in sync and all of that is aligned and clear to everyone, then not only do you feel good and can you convey and sell better, but also your potential customers feel good because they can trust you more easily because everything's consistent across the board, who
Exactly.
is, et cetera.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, the more we infuse ourselves into our businesses, the more basically we become known in a positive way, because it's all one consistent message that people are getting, from both ourselves as individuals and ourselves as the business.
Right. Yeah. And there's not that like trying to be one thing at work and trying to be
Right.
another thing at home. It's just, it all syncs together,
Right.
which I think is important. So I also wanted to share a little bit about, how people can work with you in terms of building their own brand or doing some marketing and collateral pieces. And I do think it is a beautiful niche that you have this background in business and marketing with an MBA. And then you also have this graphic design, creative, visual piece. So you're able to listen to a business owner and basically take their words and put them into images, whereas somebody who might not have both of those backgrounds in the same space, they might need to bring in a collaborator to do that, and it might get a little bit more complex. So can you share how people work with you in that capacity?
Yes. I think because I have a lot of experience being a client, I've walked in their shoes, so I really understand the idea of bottom lines and meeting those kind of goals. And also, I worked particularly in a business where we had to acquire, I worked for a bank, the credit card division of a bank, and we had to bring in new customers, and we also had to retain customers. So when you work in projects that basically require a call to action from your customers or potential customers, you develop a very different mindset of how your visual pieces need to look and behave. And I did a lot of that when I was a client. But prior to that, I was the person creating those pieces. And subsequent to that experience, I was creating pieces. And so my mindset is always on the client's goals and needs. And that informs the design I create. So when I meet with clients now, a big part of it is really understanding what their goals are, so that when I create something, it doesn't just look nice, but it communicates in a way that'll get the user or the customer or whoever it is to respond in the way that they need. So I think that there's just that whole background of understanding that I infuse into all the work I do.
Great. So it's very action oriented. You're really compelling people to take an action based on the brand, the marketing, the logo, the language, all of it compels them to act.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, and also tell us how people can contact you if they are interested in just kind of brainstorming, going through where they are in their branding journey, and how you might be able to help them. Where should they contact you?
Okay. Well, my website is a good place because you could, there's a contact form on there, and my website is collagecreativedesign.com.
Great.
So those three words, collagecreativedesign.com. And
.com.
yeah.
Good.
So that's probably a good place to start. And that's my website, and that also has my portfolio on it.
Oh, okay. Great. So people can see that visual side of your work as well.
Right.
I love that because I think it is an important piece. We have to remember everyone is learning in a different way as well. So when we are telling our story, some people are hearing it better, some people are seeing it better, and some people may need a tactile experience or an engagement to kind of solidify that story. So that's a good point. Right. Great. Well, this has been wonderful to chat with you. I think I love your personal story about how you came up with your brand and how it represents you and the work that you do. And I think that's a great takeaway for our viewers, just to have that good example there. And thanks for coming on. And we will, if anybody wants to comment on and tag us in the future on this live, we'll get back to you with any questions that you have. So thanks so much, Ronnie.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.